you're always rummaging around your purse looking for your cell phone or your MP3 player, then this is a perfect project for you. It's a handy little padded cell phone case, and it's perfect for a BlackBerry or an iPhone or an MP3 player, like I said. And it has a little handy pocket here that you can stash your headphones or a little bit of cash or maybe your ID, and a little loop that you can put around your purse handles or your belt loop. So the first thing we need to do is cut a series of rectangles. And the great thing about this project is you only need about 1/8 of a yard of fabric total. So if you have some scraps hanging out, this is a perfect scrap buster project too. So from your outer fabric, you're going to cut a 4.5 by 10 rectangle, a 3 by 4.5 inch outer pocket rectangle, and a 2.5 by 6 inch strip. And from your lining fabric, you're going to need a 4.5 by 10 inch inner rectangle and a 3.5 by 4.5 inner pocket rectangle. And you also need a 4 by 9 rectangle of fusible fleece. And if you don't have fusible fleece and you happen to have some leftover batting on hand, you can use a low loft batting and just spray it with temporary spray adhesive when it's time to adhere it to the inner pocket. And we'll get to that in a little bit. So step one is to prepare that little strip. So take your strip and fold it in half, right sides facing, and we're going to press it so it creates a nice crisp crease over here. And as you can see, I've already done that, and you can see the crease pretty prominently there. So fold it in half and sew one short edge and the long edge. And I happen to have one right here that's sewn. Now we need to turn this right side out, which looks like it can be a little bit tricky, but I'll give you some pointers. So first you want to clip your corner off and grade the seam a little bit so it's really crisp on the end when we turn it out. And I like to use either a knitting needle or a chopstick for this. There's a lot of fancy tools out there that you can use, but quite frankly, this works perfectly fine. Just get it started. Make sure you get something that has a blunt tip to it so that you're not piercing through the fabric when you turn it right side out. And just get in there and make sure you have crisp corners. And it's just that easy. Give that a good press. Make sure to set your seams. And then we're going to top stitch the perimeter. Happen to have that right here. Beautifully flat, top stitched, and ready to be pinned. But we're not quite ready for that, so just set that aside for a second, and we're going to work on our outer pocket. So as you can see with our pocket pieces, one is larger than the other. And I'm going to show you a little faux piping technique that's really cool and takes no time at all. So position your pocket pieces right sides facing, aligning one long edge, and we're going to sew this long edge with about a 1/4 inch seam. I have that right here. Now turn this to the right side and align the lower edges. And once we press this, you see you have this little lining fabric peeking out above the upper edge, and it looks like piping, and you didn't have to do any work. Fabulous, right? And now our pocket is ready to position on the outer rectangle. So what you're going to do is fold the outer rectangle in half widthwise with right sides facing, and we're going to set this fold line, and you can just finger press it like I'm doing here, or you can run it over to the iron and ironing board real quick and give it a shot of steam. Now we have a fold line that we can line up with our pocket raw edge, right sides facing again, and we're just going to stitch a 1/4 inch seam right along this raw edge, which I have done here. Fold your pocket so the right side's facing up, give it a little press, and then just baste the sides. Quick and easy. Now we're going to position that strip that we set aside on the pocket side. Just center it. You can really eyeball it here. It's not that serious. Center it along this upper edge and just pin it in place. Now it's time to deal with the lining. So grab your lining rectangle. This is where the fusible fleece comes in handy. Fusible fleece is the coolest product out there. I think it gives texture to bags, and it's so easy to work with. It's never going to slip out of place because you're fusing it to the fabric. It has a fusible side on one end and the other side is plain. So follow the manufacturer's instructions to fuse it to your rectangle. And this is where, if you're going the batting route, you can certainly just use temporary spray adhesive and position it over your rectangle. And it's cut slightly smaller so that it's not going to get stuck when you're stitching your seams. So now we're going to fuse this and get it ready for sewing. When you're ready to fuse, you want to make sure that the fusible side is facing the fabric, otherwise you'll get a pretty gunky iron on your hand. And turn the piece over so the fabric side's facing up, hot dry iron, and just lightly press across the rectangle. And you want to make sure not to slide the iron over the surface because it's going to slip out of place and not adhere as well as it should. So once you have it, you can see that it's completely stuck in place. I have one right over here, and it's ready for sewing. So you're going to fold this in half widthwise and stitch just inside of this fusible fleece line, outer edge here. And leave yourself about a 2-inch opening so that you can turn this all right side out in the end. And I have that right here. You can see I have this little hole right here. And you can backstitch on either side of the hole just to reinforce things and make sure it's good to go. You want to kind of do the same thing with your outer rectangle, which I have everything basted and all kinds of thread tails going on. Fold it in half widthwise, right sides together, and stitch the side seams. Don't leave an opening for this one, no need. And then once you've stitched this, turn it right side out. And I've basted across this little strap just for ease in turning, and you can do that too if you want to remove the pin. And once you have it here, you're going to stuff it inside of the lining. Make sure right sides are facing. Just get it in there any way you can. And then align both side seams to make sure everything's lining up. And then we're going to take it to the machine and we're going to sew this upper edge. Now before we sew this upper edge, I'm just going to put a couple of pins to anchor these seams. And to reduce bulk, I have put the seams in opposite directions, as you can see. So just a little pin through there and a little pin through here. If you like, you can pin the entire upper edge if that makes you more comfortable. I'm just going to give it a go. And actually, I'm going to start with one of the seams. So position your fabric under the presser foot. Align this edge of the presser foot with the raw edge of your fabric. Remove that first pin. Back stitch a little bit at the beginning. Now when you get to the seam, just stop, put the needle down in the fabric, and just keep maneuvering around. You can slow your machine down like I've done. You can tell that it's going pretty slow. Or if you're confident, just give it a rip. And a lot of machines have the capability to just leave, press one button and your needle will always go down in the fabric when you're done sewing. It's your prerogative, however you're most comfortable. I'm almost at the beginning, so just back stitch. And then tie off your thread tails. And now we're ready to turn it right side out. To turn your holder right side out, you want to locate that little space that we made, that little opening, and just start pulling the outer rectangle out and gently maneuver the lining. And you can use your handy dandy little chopsticks or a point turner to make sure you have crisp corners. on either side, of course. And then you want to hand sew the opening closed. Just use a slip stitch and hide your knot inside there. And once you've done that, push your lining into the outer rectangle. And again, we're going to incorporate the faux piping technique. So just make sure to extend the lining about a 1/4 inch. You can gauge it along your pocket there. 1/4 inch beyond the outer pocket upper edge. And then maneuver your corners here. Make sure everything's flat and nice and pretty. And now you're ready to decide on a closure. And you can do a number of things here. You can do a snap. You don't want to do a magnetic snap, especially if you're working with electronics in here, because things will get a little off and you'll have to take it into, your cell phone store. So if you want to hand sew a snap, it's as simple as just deciding where you want to put it, really. If you want a longer loop here, you can place it towards the top. You can position it down here if you want it to be closed. It's really your decision. And just hand sew the male and female piece on there. Or you can do a really super easy hook and loop tape dot. And I've hot glued these on here because I cheated a little bit, but you can certainly hand sew or machine sew that on there for extra durability. Or you can do a really cute button and buttonhole closure. And it's just as simple as stitching your buttonhole on this side, cut it open with a seam ripper, use a little bit of seam sealant to make sure that doesn't fray, and hand sew your button. And you're good to go. And this makes a really great gift idea. You can make an assembly line and really stitch about 20 of these in the time it would take you to stitch, 2 or 3. And you can change up the dimensions any way you like. If you're thinking that you have a smaller cell phone or a smaller MP3 player, just measure the dimensions, add about a 1/2 inch on both sides of all of your pieces to ensure that you have adequate seam allowances. You can also make this a little bit longer, just elongate this piece, and it'll fit some sunglasses or some makeup brushes or pens and pencils, whatever you like. So I hope you enjoy it.